Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. In this video I'd like to give you guys an update on my summer bedding plants that I've had in this garden over here, and also be planting up a lot of winter bedding to do me through autumn, winter and also spring. So with these two planters, as you can see, I put in some lobelia. I also put in some French marigolds in the middle. Unfortunately we had some really bad drought this summer, so these haven't grown much. You can see these look like they weren't planted that long ago, but they were actually planted several months ago. Back in I think it was about May time. It's now October, so as you can see, they're barely grown at all. They're perked up now because we've got some more rain and cooler weather, but they never really came to much. They were supposed to spill over the edge, but as I say, with the drought conditions they haven't really grown a lot. Same with the French marigolds in the middle, and they've kind of gone over now because they don't like the colder weather. The lobelias can handle a bit of colder weather as long as it's not frosty, so they're still flowering quite nicely. And quite interestingly, I did have this planted up last year in the autumn time and springtime with the same plants I'm putting in this year, and that was violas and ornamental cabbage. And you can see there's quite a few viola plants which have actually self-seeded. It's interesting to see there's lots of different variations on the flowers that are coming out. So there's quite a few ones, some of them are smaller, a bit more like the wild variety. You can see there, some of them do revert back to the wild type, and they're very small flowered. That one as well back there. But these ones have stayed quite large, a bit more like the bread varieties, so that's quite interesting. So what I'll do is I'll take out all the lobelia from here and also the marigolds. I'm going to transplant the violas into the outside bed that I have at the front of the house, and in here what I'm doing is I'm going to plant there's two pots in total. So in the center of each pot there's going to be an ornamental cabbage and an ornamental kale. So this is the ornamental cabbage, this is the ornamental kale. These do really well. They're quite frost hardy, probably -5, almost -10. They can handle a really hard frost, and their colour intenses as they go on into the season. So you can see how it's pink in the middle here, pink in the middle there. That pink will kind of spread over into more of the overall appearance as the colder weather conditions come in, as the first frost start to set in. And these will give some really good colour throughout the winter months and into spring as well. And come springtime, these will actually come up and flower. And they'll just have the normal flowers you get on brassicas, kind of yellow. They look a bit like rapeseed. They're not particularly exciting, but it's nice to have some other flowers as well as just a nice foliage. And these come in lots of different varieties. I've just got two here. That's the kale version, which is kind of crinkly. The normal version, which is kind of even leaves. And then also you get lots of different colour types. So I've got the pink ones here, or purple ones. You get different types of pinks, you get whites as well, and creams. So there's a whole load of different varieties. And you can see on the picture here, in fact, some of the more varieties that come with these types. You can see, so there's lots of different ones you can go for. So I'll plant these up, as I say, with violas. So I've got some here. For these two pots, I'm just going to go with these violas. I really like the purple ones, and they're similar to what I had previously. So one bedding pack each in each pot will look quite nice. These other plants are actually for the main bed. So I've got Cineraria, which is a foliage plant, planted in winter. Not super frost hardy, but normally it's overwinters. As long as it's not much more than -5, it'll overwinter. And this has got yellow flowers in spring, but it's not the flowers you go for, it's for the foliage. They're quite green at the moment, but as it gets older you can see the older leaves are really silvery, and they'll be completely silver. So it's quite a bright colour. It's nice in the dark winter days to have a nice bright colour of the Cineraria there. I'm also going to dot in some blue flowers as well, just to kind of contrast with the lighter colour of that. And then some bright yellow flowers as well, just to have some more brightness in the bed. So all those three will be going over in this bed here. So this has been not been too bad this summer. It was really good early on in the summer, but the droughts really caused some issues this summer. The main bed was full of Antonyms, and I'll show you a picture now of how that looked come early spring. As you can see, the Antonyms did look really good, but they got a fungal infection. They had an Antonyms rust, which affects the foliage. It makes all the leaves have these little kind of rusty spots on it, kind of orange coloured. That spreads to the stems, and the whole plant eventually dies. And I'll show you some pictures now, some close-ups I took, and you can see how devastated the plants actually were. So they were completely killed by that, and that was by midsummer. So it's been quite bare, this bed, since midsummer, but what the extra space has allowed is it's allowed the spring and autumn and winter plants that I put in last year to actually grow on and do really well. So these largest plants here are the wallflowers. Wallflowers have fantastically showy colours. I think these are yellow if I remember correctly. I think I have actually got one in flower now, and I'll just go show you that. So this one is obviously a bit confused by the time of year, and this one's already flowering. See these nice yellow flowers. I'll show you some pictures as well of how this looked in spring, and you'll see there was quite a few of them around in the bed and they look quite nice. So they've got really big, these plants now. You can see they're like small shrubs. These will probably only do one more season because they're going to get too leggy. What happens is wallflowers don't really last more than a few years, then get quite leggy. You can see the bottom half is already getting a bit bare, and the wind will probably blow them over. So what I'll do in this video is I'll cut them back. I'll get secateurs, cut them back to about this kind of height. So I'm cutting off the main shoot. What that encourages is all these smaller side shoots down the bottom here. You can see some of them just between the leaves. These are going to grow. You can create a bushier plant, a smaller plant, well, lower in height anyway, it'll be wider in width, and that'll be better suited to survive the winter. It shouldn't be as leggy come spring as well. So as I say, these have got really big, they're all like small shrubs now, and these plants were just tiny when I put them in last spring. I'll show you a clip now of me putting them in last spring so you can see how small they were. So I put the wallflowers in the middle and the primroses on the outside. The reason for that is the primroses, they stay very small. They only grow about 10-20 centimeters at most, whereas the wallflowers can get to about 2 or 3 foot. So as you can see, the wallflowers in the middle. And then the final spring plant that's done well over the summer is the primulas here. Some of them you can see are flowering already. Primulas are quite good like that. They quite often get confused in the autumn months, and they'll start flowering again in autumn. They are spring flowers, and they'll flower much better in spring. You can see a lot of them aren't flowering, a lot of them are still just leaves, and that's how they should be in autumn. But what they'll do is they'll sometimes get a bit confused, put some flowers on in autumn as well, so you get some autumn colour, which is nice. But it's in spring that the flowering is at its best. And these have done quite well, despite this drought that we've had this summer. They did die back a bit during the hottest, driest months, but they've come back quite well now. You can see some of them are quite small, such as this one over here, and that one there. Other ones, like this one, is quite a lot bigger. And this could have to be split. There's probably about 3 plants in here. You can see there's a central rosette there, another central rosette on this side, and one on the far side. So that, if I wanted to, could be split into 3 plants, but because this bed is already quite full of spring plants, I'm not going to split it anymore. And at the end here I've got my shoe fly plant. This is quite an unusual plant. You don't see it too much in gardens. It is quite toxic, so you don't want to be touching it too much or getting the sap on you. But it's got these lovely blue flowers. They only last about a day. These ones are kind of shriveling up because it's quite cold today. There was almost a touch of frost last night. But they've also got fantastic black stems. They often have black spots on the leaves as well, but I think most of the black spots are kind of worn away. Looks like they've been damaged. But the black stems also look really nice. It's quite an interesting plant to say, it's quite unusual. Seed heads as well can be used as quite a nice ornamental thing. They dry out. They look a bit like Peruvian chili, but they are a lot more toxic, so you can't eat them at all. And they are dry, they don't have fruits. It's just like a ball of seeds. So I'll be collecting those seeds and growing them more next year, because this did quite well. To say, it looks a bit sorry at the moment because it's just going over. So the plan for this is the silver cineraria. I'll probably put them down in the middle because they'll get quite large. They'll get as big as these wallflower plants, if not larger, but I'm not sure if I'll keep them into summer next year because they could get a bit too large. We'll just see how it's doing. I'll probably definitely take out the wallflowers though, because the wallflowers are just about at the end, as good as they'll ever get. These are going to kind of finish come next summer, so they'll be coming out, but they'll be looking nice anyway for next spring. They'll be looking at their best for next spring. As I say, about 1 or 2 years, and then they look at their absolute best. Every year after that, they kind of go over and get leggy. So they're going to give a great display. And then any space I've got left, I'm just going to dot in with some flowers. I'll probably put the blue flowers in between the cineraria down the middle. There's not a huge number of cineraria, not a huge number of blue pansies, so they'll go in the middle. And then the yellow pansies, they're going to go on the outside, probably in between wherever there's space. I'm not too sure on the design yet. I'll just kind of make it up as I go along. Wherever there's a good amount of space, I'll dot them in. They'll stay quite small. They'll put on a little bit of growth come autumn. So it's October at the moment. Ideally I would have done this in September, but I've been a bit too busy. So I'm putting them in October, a little bit late. It's not that warm anymore. They're going to grow quite slow, but they'll put on a bit of growth, a bit of colour for autumn. Come mid-winter, when it's really cold, they'll stop growing, but they don't die. They're very hardy plants. They can probably take -15, -20. They'll look quite sorry for themselves though. They'll stop flowering. They'll just stay dormant, they won't put in any growth. And then come spring, as soon as the warmer weather comes, they'll put on loads of strong growth, a really good flowering display. So this will be absolutely covered in flowers come spring. Over winter this bed won't have many flowers, but it will be quite full, because there'll be plenty of plants in there. But the 2 pots that I'm planting up, at least the cabbages will keep flowered, because even though the violas might stop in the coldest months, the cabbages will keep that nice colour that they have in their leaves and will continue looking nice. So that's everything now planted up. What I've done with these ones is I put in a little bit of fresh compost just to top up the level and make sure the compost is refreshed, and also put in a little bit of slow release organic fertiliser. Blood, fish and bone is what I've used, and that's to just give it a little bit of feed. You don't want to feed autumn plants too much, because what happens is they put on a lot of new fresh growth. That growth is quite susceptible to frost, and they'll just get more frost damage if you give them too much feed. So I'll give them, as I say, a small amount, so they will put on some growth, but at the same time not too much. I planted this one up because you just had some violas, put them around. By spring they'll hopefully be trailing over, especially if the aphids aren't too bad in spring. This one on the left, my girlfriend wanted to plant one up, so she did this one. The reason these are flopping down is because they were very dry. They've dried out. It's been quite breezy today and quite sunny, so they've actually dried out, but they'll come back. They've given everything a good soak, so they'll soon perk up. The compost is nice and damp now. And coming over to the bed, what I've done here is I've trimmed, as you can see, all the wallflowers, so they're going to bush out nicely. All the other bedding plants, some of them are looking a bit squashed because they've been given a heavy water, but they'll perk up in a few hours and they'll be looking like there's been no problem with them. So the soil, I didn't have to put too much compost in, but I had some left over, so put some in. The soil here was already very good, so because I've already put a lot of compost here in the past, as I had some spare compost, put a bit extra in. Also put in some blood, fish and bone again as a slow release organic fertiliser, and that's just to make sure there's enough feed to keep them going over the winter and into spring. Come springtime I will give them probably a liquid feed to give them a real boost as the season begins, but generally they don't need much feed over winter. And I gave it a fork over, make sure it's nice and loose, give them a good watering, see how they do. Hopefully we'll get some warmer weather before winter comes. It's been about 8 degrees most days at the moment, touch frost quite a few mornings, but this weekend and into next week I think it's supposed to get up to about 16-17 degrees, maybe 10 degrees at night, so we should get a bit of growth from these plants. It's still early October, so there's enough sunshine around that they will put on some growth if the weather's warm enough. Hopefully it'll keep going quite well. I'll give you guys an update probably quite a bit later. It might even be spring, and I'll see how well they're doing, and hopefully that'll put on a bit of growth. And definitely if it is spring for the next update, the wallflowers will be put on lots of nice flowers, and this should be looking really good.